Here's an example of our media inciting violence, fanning the flames of insurrection. They've been doing this since President Trump declared that he was running for president, and they ramped up their efforts. They have been doing everything in their power to incite violence in this country. They have, in my opinion, done everything in their power to put the president's life in danger in any way possible that they could incite anybody to act violently against the president. They have done everything they possibly could have. They have put the president's safety in jeopardy throughout his entire presidency, beginning on before the inauguration. They have never ever shown any concern over the president's safety or the threats that have been made against his life. They, in other words, have been doing everything they can to provoke what is happening right now. And here's an example. Cooper, that's Anderson Cooper. Most people haven't heard of this nobody on a nobody network, CNN. Well, they became a network again when coronavirus started. This is their 6-month-long hurricane that they're so excited about. It's sickening watching them try to hide or disguise their utter happiness and joy in reporting on the coronavirus. It was even more sickening to see them hiding their smirks when the death toll had reached 100,000 before these riots broke out, which, by the way, they refused to call them riots. But the title of this on CNN's YouTube, Cooper on Trump's move. He's a wannabe wartime president. And let's listen to what this nobody has to say about it.
Good evening. We are witnessing a failure of presidential leadership at a time when this country, when we, the people, need it more than ever, perhaps in our lifetime. Tonight, with flashbang grenades going off and tear gas in the air, the President of the United States, a wannabe wartime president, had what he hoped was his MacArthur moment, his patent promise. Calling himself our law and order president, he said he'll send active duty military troops into American states and cities to dominate, his words, dominate demonstrators in the wake of the police killing of George Floyd a week ago. What happened in this past hour would be comical if it wasn't so dangerous and so destructive. The president spoke from the Rose Garden, and even as he declared himself, quote, that ally of all peaceful protesters, troops, Secret Service members, and mounted police were moving on what, until moments before, had been a peaceful crowd in Lafayette Park across from the White House. You're seeing what happened right there. Had been a peaceful crowd.
Okay, hold on.
This church is a landmark in many ways, so it's
here's
very
video
difficult to see
from
this
last
building
night.
go up in flames. So hopefully they can get here and put out the fire. That's what we see right now. Shannon, back to you.
Yeah, and Kevin, so people know that is an historic church that's just across Lafayette Park from the White House. Numerous presidents, dozens of presidents, have sat in those pews. They have gone there in times of national trouble. They've gone there for regular Sunday services. For generations and generations, presidents and their families have walked across Lafayette Park and gone and sat in.
Look at these pieces of shit.
Usually on Inauguration Day, you'll see them go there and have a prayer service welcoming in the new administration. It is something that has been done as tradition for a long, long time. It is a landmark. It is historic right there across the street, across Lafayette Park in Washington. So to see it now under attack and in flames, that's a part of this country's history, as so many other places that we've seen across the country. It's heartbreaking, and you hate to see the destruction, and now to worry that a piece of history is going to be lost in Washington as well.
What about the president's safety? Nobody on any of these national news media seems to give a fuck about the president's safety. Back to Cooper. Now let's hear him again.
What happened in this past hour would be comical if it wasn't so dangerous and so destructive.
In this past hour. What about in less than the past 24 hours? But in any case, and then he wants to say destructive. He's referring to this as destructive.
The president spoke from the Rose Garden, and even as he declared himself, quote, that ally of all peaceful protesters, troops, Secret Service members, and mounted police were moving on what, until moments before, had been a peaceful crowd in Lafayette Park across from the White House.
Also,
you're seeing what happened right
moments.
there. That had been a peaceful crowd.
And
throughout his brief remarks,
so
forces of what he called law and order were creating chaos unlike anything seen in Washington in decades. As you listen to what the president...
It doesn't seem like they're creating chaos. It seems like they're putting a stop to chaos. But in any case, okay, come on, Cooper.
The president said, we're going to show you also what was happening at the exact same moment, just a couple hundred yards away.
A couple hundred yards away from where? From the President of the United States? Okay, let's see what was happening just a couple hundred of yards away from the President of the United States of America. Let's see what was happening.
Utilizing all available federal resources, civilian and military, to stop the rioting and looting, to end the destruction and arson, and to protect the rights of law-abiding Americans, including your Second Amendment rights. Therefore, the following measures are going into effect immediately. First.
Okay, so what are we getting at here, Cooper? What the violent protesters were being kept at bay, a couple of hundred of yards away from the President of the USA. Is that so horrible? Did you want them to let the protesters storm the President of the United States of America? What is your issue with this, Anderson? Are you angry that the president was not allowed to be physically attacked? Are you angry that his safety was actually being assured as he delivered these remarks to the nation? Which, by the way, Anderson, most of the country is quite horrified by your commentary and the commentary of your colleagues in this destructive environment of rioting and looting and I would imagine that George Floyd's family is probably absolutely just heartbroken over the way that their deceased loved one's name is being used in vain, not only by these rioters, these violent rioters, these anarchists, but as well as by you and the rest of your colleagues and the mainstream wannabe news outlet media. You guys are a disgrace. You are the number one disgrace, more than these looters and these anarchists. You, mainstream media of America, are an absolute disgrace to this country, and the vast majority of Americans would absolutely, unequivocally agree with what I just said. You guys are more of a destructive disgrace to this country, and all of you are a complete joke, and all of you should be held accountable. But that's okay. I support the First Amendment. However, all of you are absolutely accountable for this. So pat yourselves on the back. You got your ratings, you fucking losers. Now let's hear how Anderson Cooper reported on the protesters just 1 month ago who were protesting the shutdowns over the coronavirus in their states and in their capitals.
There have been more protests across the country over state stay-at-home orders. Over the weekend, there were multiple rallies in places like Maryland as well as Indiana. You can see people in some areas openly defying social distancing guidelines. The president has publicly encouraged the protests and even accused governors of going overboard with stay-at-home restrictions.
You're allowed to protest. I mean, they feel that way. I watched the protest, and they were all 6 feet apart. I mean, it was a very orderly group of people. But, you know, some have gone too far. Some governors have gone too far. Some of the things that happened are maybe not so appropriate. They've got cabin fever. They want to get back. They want their life back. Their life was taken away from them.
Look at...
These are the very guidelines the president himself has put into place. Miguel Marquez, our national correspondent, is in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, where hundreds of protesters are now outside the state capitol. Miguel, what's it like?
Let's hear it.
Yeah, well, as the president has used the briefing room at the White House and his Twitter feed to sort of encourage these protests, this is what we have. There are several hundred still here. They've just wrapped up the official part of this protest, but there are still several protesters here. I'm going to show you the truck here that's going by with all the flags. Much of this feels like a Donald Trump re-election rally at the same time. Many people coming out to support the president. Many not.
Oh my goodness, I'm sorry.
Some are, but a lot of the people in this crowd right now are not wearing masks and don't have a particular concern about the coronavirus. They think either it is completely political or it doesn't really apply to them or it's not as serious as they say. There were several hundred on this side of the street, there were several hundred on that side of the street, and then you had hundreds and hundreds of cars coming up and down. I mean, in all, they probably had thousands of people, protesters out in front here, urging the governor to reopen the state. The governor issuing an extension of the stay-at-home order while this protest was going on. So clearly there is a standoff between the state governor here in Pennsylvania and the protesters. Many, at least in the polling that we've seen in recent days, many, both Republicans and Democrats, think that these stay-at-home orders should be lifted as soon as possible, but many are for them at the moment on at least a national basis. Anderson?
Miguel, the president said everybody seems to be staying 6 feet apart. It certainly doesn't, or at least in the ones he saw, people are staying 6 feet apart. It doesn't certainly seem that's the case there.
It is concerning. We spoke to several people. This is after the protest, so it's far fewer people here right now. Most people not wearing masks. Almost nobody staying 6 feet apart from each other. There is no sense of social distancing on either side of the street. The cars going by are the one thing, the part of the protest where people can stay in their cars and sort of honk their support for the protesters and for reopening the state. But there are a lot of different organizations. It has part a feel of a religious sort of a protest, part political, and part sort of campaign rally for the president. Anderson?
So, Miguel, just finally, just logically, the thing I don't quite understand is these are the president's own guidelines that he has supposedly backed, at least publicly backed. I know he's now tweeted out, liberate various states, but the supporters seem to be in favor of the president and yet believe that the guidelines that he himself has been pushing are too onerous.
You hear him trying to call the protesters stupid, basically. He's basically trying to discredit the protesters.
Yeah, well, I think it's parts and parcel of the chaotic response that the White House has had to this and the president's own thinking about whether or not this is real or whether he's known it all along that it's real. Many of the people out here that I spoke to who aren't wearing masks say it's just either made up by the media, it is completely created by politicians, and they fear that this is part of an effort by at least the state government in Pennsylvania and other Democratic forces. Nancy Pelosi's name has been uttered here in not the most favorable terms, that this is an effort to sort of control the political process by using the coronavirus to their advantage. Anderson?
And they believe the president is, a victim of that somehow? That he doesn't realize that what's going on? Anyway.
Again, China, he's basically doubting everything that the protesters are protesting and ultimately referring to them as stupid. Like he's such an intellectual. Don't you just want to slap him in his face? I mean, look at his face right here. Wouldn't you just like to just bitch slap this son of a bitch?
Okay. You know what? I'll let you go. Miguel Marquez, appreciate it. Thanks very much.
Look at them fucking idiots. April 20th is the date of that video. Let's take a look at the Pennsylvania on April 20th. Oh, jeez. Sorry again. Let's go to April. Let's go around April 20th. Okay, let's go. Let's go to the top. Okay. New tests. Positive, negative, pending, hospitalized, deaths, total. Okay, deaths. Okay. So let's go down to April. Okay. So we're April 11th. Positive. And then, let's see. Here's the deaths. Here's the positives. Well, it does appear there was an uptick. Now, again, let's see. There was a substantial uptick in deaths in Pennsylvania around this time. There was. But, look at this, after that protest. Let's see, April 20th. 33,000. Let's look at a week later. April 20th. Wait, let's look at the deaths too on April 20th. 1,200. 33,000. Let's go to a week later. Let's go to the April 26th. Wow. Look at that. Well, it didn't double, though. And the deaths did, though. Wow. I'll concede in my feelings about all of this coronavirus stuff. This coronavirus has been beating us every step of the way. Look at this. They got a pretty high number over there in Pennsylvania. 72,000. How many deaths? Wow. 5,500 deaths? Goodness. Well, in any case, I don't hear him worrying. It just... He scrutinized those protesters, but he's not even... Look at what he's saying about these peaceful protesters. He's full of shit, that's all.